Hey everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to qualify for the Great Britain age group team. So if you've got big aspirations on racing in Team GB kit for your age group, then you've come to the right place. We are going to tell you exactly what you need to do to qualify. Step by step, we'll go through things that you need to know. So let's get started. First of all, a huge welcome. So I'll do a bit of an introduction about who I am, the racing that I've done before, what you need to do to be eligible to join the Great Britain age group team, how to choose your event and your qualification and how to register for that event. And then we'll move on to some tips for success and then what happens when you qualify, and we'll do a quick wrap up at the end. So hopefully I won't take the full hour of your time. We'll whiz through it as quickly and concisely as possible. About me, my name's Gemma and I am the head coach at Block Coaching and Race Team. I am a qualified triathlon coach, an inside coach and tester. If you haven't seen Inside before, give it a quick Google. It's amazing. It's basically lactate testing at home on your turbo. It's really cool and very, very precise. So you don't need to do all the blood draws and everything else. That's for another time. I won't get too distracted on that. I've coached athletes from total beginners up through to Kona qualifiers and races, World and European Championships, to that just want to have fun and cross the finish line with a big smile on their face. I'm also a level 3 personal trainer, so I know what I'm talking about in terms of strength, mobility and general fitness. I'm a level 3 pre and postnatal exercise instructor, so I can bring you back into fitness whilst kind of you're recovering from having your baby and also whilst you're pregnant. I'm a 200-hour yoga instructor, qualified life coach and trainee BTF race official. So if you've got any questions on the rules and regulations of your races, then I'm your girl. As a racing, I am an Ironman World Championship qualifier. I died shortly after having my first baby. I've raced the GB age group World and European, almost all distances, Aquathlon, Triathlon and Duathlon, pre and post baby. So it's something that I'm really passionate about and I really enjoy. Actually, I get quite a buzz from qualifying and racing the GB kit. It's still fun even 10 years down the line. So I've dabbled in different distances and then I've done some endurance cycling and stuff as well. So I'm a little bit addicted to it all, as you can see. I mentioned before I've got 2 children. I've got Ted who's 6 and Tilly who's 2. So I'm a bit of an expert at juggling the triathlon training, racing, qualifying, everything else that goes with that. So let's move on. We're going to go through the summary of the road to qualification. So you start off with your BTF membership, you identify your qualifying races, you enter those races and you perform to be able to qualify. And then afterwards you review whether you've met those qualification criteria. We're going to go through each of those in detail. We'll start first with eligibility. So you must be a member of British Triathlon. So I've put on a little screenshot here which shows the essential membership, the core membership and the ultimate membership, which are shown on the BTF page when you go onto the membership section. You need to be either a core or ultimate member to be able to qualify. You will want these anyway to give you the appropriate covers, legal covers, race licenses and so on. So go on, sign up for your membership. It needs to be valid at the time of your race, and then it still needs to be valid when you come to accept your qualification, and then when you come to race in your GB kit as well at those European or World Championships. You need to be a British citizen to join the GB age group team. That's fairly self-explanatory. There are guidelines on that if you want to just check some technicalities, and you can check all of those on the BTF website. You need to choose your goal. So it's all good, all well and good saying, oh, I want to qualify for GB, but which race do you want to do? Do you want to do sprint, Olympic, middle, long? And then in which genre? Do you want to do a triathlon, aquathlon, duathlon, aquabike or cross? So there are lots of different options for you to choose from, and you need to decide what you want to qualify before you go and qualify for them. Quite self-explanatory really, isn't it? But you do need to make those decisions because you need to choose your qualifying races carefully. You need to enter them early because they generally sell out. They're very popular races. So you need to have a bit of a season plan in there. So now is the time to be thinking about what you want to qualify for to do those qualifying races next year. So have a good think about those and then decide whether you want the World Championships or the European Championships. And there are slightly different qualification criteria for each of those. And also the venues change each year, so they're not always in the same place. You need to consider when you're signing up for a qualification race where that world or European championship will be, and then all of the associated costs, logistics, travel time, the time of year for that race, and whether you actually want to put yourself through the qualification experience, because are you going to travel, pay for, and spend the time for that race as well. So as an example, it's Australia for the World Championships. Lots of people don't want to do that travel. So consider that whilst you're choosing your qualification races and you're setting your expectations. You can find the list of qualifying races and all of the World and European Championships on the BTF website. So it's quite easy to find. You go onto the BTF website, you click on the age group teams section, and then there's the qualifying events and calendars. And you just click on each one and it drops down the qualifying races for that particular event. Each race and each qualifying event has a deadline for qualifications. You need to make sure that you have registered your intent to qualify before you race that event. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Qualification. There are different ways that you can qualify for your championship slot. There are generally 20 slots per age group, and you need to finish within the specified time of the winner of your age group. And by specified time, I mean for European Championships, you must finish within 120% of the winner of your age group's time to be eligible to qualify. For World Championships, you need to be 115% of the winner of your age group. So it's important to know what that kind of qualification criteria is. You can get a really good idea of how fast you need to go by looking at prior year results. But if you're turning up and hoping for a roll down slot or for a top 4, then you need to know roughly what sort of time you're aiming for. So to get the automatic slots for qualification, you need to position yourself within the top 4 of your age group. So you need to be the first, second, third, or fourth person over the line in your age group. And that will guarantee you a qualification slot, provided you have registered for your race with BTF before you race. So you can't turn up at a qualification race, find that you're in the top 4, and then go back to BTF and say, well, actually, I'd quite like to qualify. I did pretty well at that race. It doesn't work like that. You need to state your intent before you go to the race. If you haven't stated your intent and you haven't signed up on the BTF website, but you find yourself in the top 4, you've lost your slot. That slot then goes down. So it's the top 4 people that are registered that get the slots. Okay, you must be registered. That's really, really important, and we'll touch on that again in a moment. There are also pre-qualified slots. So people might not have done the qualification races this year, but they've still qualified because of things that they've done in the prior year. So we'll have another look at that as well. And then you get your roll down places. So you get your four qualification positions in each race automatically for the top 4 people that cross the line first and who had registered to qualify for that race. And then you get pre-qualified places, which can be up to 4 positions as well. So that takes you up to 16. So you get an extra 4 places that roll down. So the roll downs go based on the fastest finishers out of all of the qualification races. So if you've registered your intent to qualify, you go to your qualification race, but you fall outside of the top 4, you will get a percentage put next to your name on the BTF website. So you can see that on this photo here. Some of them have got, if you look all the way down, 106.09% Bournemouth. So that's saying that this particular person has raced at Bournemouth Triathlon. She did not come within the top 4 who had registered for a qualification spot, but her finishing time was 106% of the winners. So that means she's within that 115 or 120% that you need to have to be able to qualify. So she goes then into the pool effectively for roll downs. And you can see also on here on this example that there are some others on there that have registered but not got it within the top 4. So you've got 109%, 109.7 and 107.5. So generally they go through, and the closest time to 100% will get that roll down slot, and that will happen again and again until all of the slots are filled. So if one of the pre-qualifieds or one of the automatic qualifiers from a race turns down their spot, it will roll down and be offered to the next fastest person based on these percentages. So it's not based on your actual time. So for example, you could race at Eton Dorney, which is a really fast and flat course, and get a really awesome time, but you might be 114% of the winner's time, but you're super fast. Or you could race somewhere else. So for example, Llandudno, and be 103% of the winner's time, but actually it's a really slow hilly course. So instead of doing a 103 sprint triathlon, you did a 121, but actually you're qualified because your percent behind the winner of that race is smaller than the person who did the Eton Dorney race. So I hope that makes sense. So it's not based on your time, it's based on your percentage behind the winner of your race in your age group. And that's really important to remember. So it's not just based on the clock. It's kind of calculated to make it a bit fairer. It's slightly different for the longer races. So if you click through on the BTF website to look at the championships and qualifiers, you will see the longer distances have slightly different qualification criteria. Instead of racing 3 or 4 select events to gain your qualifications, you actually submit your time from a race you've done already. It's a little bit backwards. So for the sprints and the standards, you have to register your intent by the Friday before you race. For the longer distances, generally, you have to do the race and then you come and register your intent and you submit your qualification race time to BTF for consideration to be included within the team. But for the longer distances, you still need to be within that 115% or the 120% of the winner of your age group's time. But you get to choose which result you submit. And if you submit a result and then go off and race a better time with a smaller percent from the winner of your age group, you can then update your results to include that faster time. You're not stuck. So if, for example, you put a time on and then you see that everybody else after the first round of qualifications got in, but last weekend you did a faster race, you can then put in your faster result. So you give yourself another chance effectively. So long as you're still within the qualification deadline, then you can do that. And that's quite a nice way of knowing what you need to do and going off and finding another race to qualify with. There are some criteria about what size race and the distances that you need to do to be able to qualify. So races must have a minimum of 200 finishes in their results. That doesn't mean 200 people in your age group. That's the results in total. So the races must be of a certain size to be relevant. So you couldn't, for example, run a race from your village hall with your mates that only have 10 of you there and you say, oh, look, actually, I was 100% of the winner's time because we all crossed the line together. That doesn't count. It needs to be an official race with at least 200 people. You will also need to submit a link to your results as proof. So this helps BTF verify your results in your time and the winner's time against what you have submitted. So it's just a way of helping them verify that what you've put in is correct. And again, there are deadlines. So unlike the shorter distances where you have to register by the Friday before the qualification race, there are different dates throughout the year where you need to be registered by and places considered. So the earlier you register, generally, the better chances you've got. But if you registered late, then there is still a chance that you might get some space, get a qualification space if there are still spaces left on the team. Pre-qualification, we mentioned that these are some slots where you might not necessarily have to race one of the qualifier races that year. Generally, for the World Championships, you need to have been within the top 15 in the World Championships from the year before and one of the top 3 GBR athletes. Okay, so you might have finished I don't know, you might have finished 5th in the World Championships last year, but ahead of you were 4 other GBRs. So you won't get a pre-qualification slot there. You need to be one of the first 3 GBs and top 15. For the Europeans, you need to be within the top 10 and again, one of the first 3 GBRs. For both of those, you can also pre-qualify if you win your age group at the British Championships the year before. So you might find when you go to some races, somebody turns up who won the British Championships last year, or they won the Worlds and they've actually pre-qualified already. So they will not get, if they've already pre-qualified, they will not get an automatic qualification slot on the Q1, 2, 3, 4 on the finishing position because they've pre-qualified. So say, for example, the person that pre-qualified finished first in that age group, then the first 4 qualifiers that automatically qualify, are you still with me, will then go to positions 2, 3, 4, and 5. Do you see? So one slot's already taken. She's already got her slot in the pre-qualification because she won her age group in the British Championships last year, or at the World Championships she won, for example. So the next 4 fastest finishers that qualified, that are still within the 115 or 120% of her time, will get those Q1 to Q4s. So that's something quite useful to remember when you are signing up to races or when you are going to races and trying to figure out afterwards whether you've qualified or not, that some people may have pre-qualified. So you might still get an automatic slot if you finish 5th or 6th, for example, because people might have qualified at different races or they might have already pre-qualified. Just on that, if you were to do 2 or 3 qualifiers, and you were top 4 in all of them, you would still only get 1 qualification spot. And then when they work out the top 4, they just skip you and work out the 4 underneath you. So I've mentioned quite a lot of times that you need to register for your race and you need to register to qualify. So you sign up to your race as normal. Do be careful though, because some events do, for example, a sprint triathlon, and they'll split it into 2 waves. So they'll have one wave as a normal sprint triathlon, and then they will have a second wave as a sprint qualification triathlon. So you need to make sure that when that's the case, you are entering the wave or the specific event for the GBR qualifications. So do make sure you do that when you enter with the race organizer. Once you've entered, if you know that you want to qualify, you need to go straight over to the BTF website and find the championships that you want to qualify for, and then click on register for this event on that page. This needs to be done before Friday at 5 p.m. before the race. If you miss this deadline, you will not qualify for the GBR team at this race, even if you finish in the top 4. Okay, you must have registered your intent to be able to get that qualification spot. To register your intent, you must pay the race registration fee. So it's currently £13.50 and it looks as though it's going up to £14.50 for the 2026 championships. So this is basically an admin fee for your qualification that goes to BTF. You do not get this fee back if you do or do not qualify. This is a permanent fee. So make sure you've registered your intent and that you've paid your fee, and then you'll get an email from BTF just as a payment summary and telling you which event you've registered for. But you will also see on that qualification page, if you scroll down to your age group, your name will automatically come up as a registered qualifier effectively. So somebody who would like to qualify. And then if you do qualify, you will get what we saw on the other page, is a Q, a Q1, or a roll down place, or a PQ. Make sure your name has come up on the event that you want to and in the correct age group. So just mentioning the correct age group there, you are banded into your normal 4-year age group. So for example, 40 to 44, 45 to 49. If you are, say, 39 and you are registering for a race championship next year, so you turn 40 next year, your time and your qualification category will be bumped up for next year. So when you go to figure out whether you finish in the top four, if you're turning 40 next year, you will be comparing your time now to the 40 to 44 category and what your position would have been in that category. So you might find that you might have finished sixth in your 35 to 39 category, but actually when you put your result up into the 40 to 44 category, you might have finished third. So actually you've qualified. Equally, it can go the other way. So if you had a blind of a race and you finished second in your 35 to 39 category, but then you compare your time to the 40 to 40 category and actually you would have been 10th, you wouldn't qualify because you are racing for qualification in the category that is relevant for the World Championship or European Championship that you have registered for. So just remember that if you are moving up a category, you need to just consider what their finishing times and your finishing position would be in their category, not your own. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's just go through some tips on how you can really maximize your chances for success and qualifying in the GB age group team. So we've mentioned all the qualifying races, how to find the championships, and then the qualifying races for each championships. Research these. This is the best thing for you to do if you are serious and dedicated to wanting to qualify. So once you've found your list of qualifying events, consider those qualifying races' location. So how easy are they to get to? If there's one in the arse end of, I don't know, Scotland, or it's out in, I don't know, the absolute tip of Cornwall, and not very many people are going to likely travel there, then they may be easier qualification races because you've got less people traveling. But equally, you need to consider the course profiles. What suits you? Do you like to just get down into that aero position and push a really consistent power the whole time? Is that where you excel? Is that where you're talented? Or are you talented in riding up hills and doing really technical descents? So again, going back to the example, would an Eton Dorney qualifier be better for you? Or would the Llandudno qualifier be better for you, where you're doing 4 laps of the Orme and you're climbing and descending and it's quite technical? So where are your strengths going to be? And enter the races where you are strongest against your competitors. And then also consider whether you're drafting or non-drafting. You might be an absolute genius when it comes to drafting races. You've had loads of crit practice. You've got no fear. You can corner in a group, you know. If that's your thing and you've got the tactics and the know-how of how to draft effectively and work really well in a group, go for it. Do your drafting races. If you're terrified of cycling next to people, you don't like being in a group, you're not very good at cornering, then you might stand more chance of a non-drafting qualifier. So just consider that. But then also bear in mind that your World Championship or European Championship may be drafting. So it's something to consider when you're training and when you're racing as to what's going to be best for you. Also, consider your dates and the clashes with other big races. So if there's a qualifier on that clashes with a World Championships of that same distance, you probably want to go to the qualifier, don't you? Because all of the really, really good, fast people are likely to be off racing that World or European Championship, which means they're not going to be at that qualification race. So that's a bit of a no-brainer, really. As an example, there's a sprint qualifier on the 6th of September next year, 6th or 7th of September, and there's also the European Triathlon Championships in Turkey that date. So a fair whack of people who regularly turn up and qualify are going to be away in Turkey racing the European Championship. So that's a perfect event then to go and try and qualify, because a lot of the competition are elsewhere. So you just need to think intelligently about some of the races and how they work with calendars and people's travel logistics. You can also go as far as researching the previous age group winners' times at those events, or you can have a look through at the other qualification races, see who's qualifying, and then have a look at what their times are and what sort of times you need to be able to get to qualify on those courses. So what I want you to take away from this particular section is choosing a race that suits you and to be a bit clever about which races you're choosing to go and qualify at. This is something that I would say most people do, but not very many people will admit to it. So research your competitors. If you want to qualify, knowing what sort of times and who you're racing against will really help. So all of the information is publicly available on the BTF website. So you know when I said to you, when you qualify, double check that your name has gone down onto the list in your age group for that championship. Everybody else's name who wants to qualify will also go on that list for that championship. So you know exactly who you're racing against for that qualification spot. So you can have a look. There are some really good research tools, for a better word. So you can have a look on mytriranking.com, which is really good for the shorter distances, and enduranceData.com, which is really good for the longer distances. And you can get a really nice idea on what sort of qualification times people are putting out, their general race time. So it helps you benchmark where your training needs to be before you turn up to these races. It also gives you a good idea on who your competition is going to be. So you can have a look through the kind of 10, 15, 20 people that have registered their intent to qualify with you. You can see where their strengths lie. And you'll also know how closely you'll be racing together. And if you know there are 5 of you that have near enough the same PBs in races, you know you've got to be switched on for a sprint finish all the way to the end. So it's really good to know who you're racing, what their strengths are, where you really need to push yourself in order to beat them. And that can really help in the races. So it's worth doing. If you've got any questions on that, let me know, because I am a proper race stalker when it comes to qualification events. So I can help you out there if you need to. Probably shouldn't admit that, but there we go. I quite enjoy doing a bit of research and predicting where I'm going to finish and what time. So it's yeah, hit me up. um, my biggest tip is if you are going to enter a qualification race, even if you don't think you are going to qualify or you think you've got no chance, still register. I mean, it's 13, 14 pounds. Put your name down. You just don't know what's going to happen. The worst thing for you would be to turn up at a qualification race and think to yourself, oh, I'm just going to give it a bash and see what happens. I'm not going to qualify, but I'd like to know whereabouts I would be in the field. You may as well put your name down because you never know. You might qualify, or you might get a roll down. People drop out of races all the time. Things happen. People crash, punctures happen, people feel sick, and lots of people don't turn up. So the chances that you could qualify aren't that daft. So give it a go. There are 20 places in each age group, which is quite a lot, really. In quite a lot of the age groups, there are often not that many people even registered. So you can go on and have a look on the websites and see how many people are vying for those slots. And if it's under 20 and you know you can go 115 or 120% of that winner of your age group's time, then that's quite a straightforward qualification for you. You just need to turn up and race and get that time. And the chances are that you will get one of those qualification spots. So never feel embarrassed or ashamed of giving it a go. You've got nothing to lose. Your name goes on that list. That's it. I mean, like, what do you lose? Nothing. It's always worth a try. And if you don't put your name down and you would have got a slot, then you're going to kick yourself, aren't you? So if don't feel like you're not good enough and don't let anybody else tell you that you're not good enough. I remember when I first started trying to qualify, it was in my very first year. And I told one of my friends at the time, and he just laughed at me. He was like, oh, No, don't be ridiculous. And I almost didn't try, and I did, and I got in with a roll down slot. I think I got one of the very last roll down slots. But the point is that I tried and I did it. And then a couple of years later, he was like, well, maybe I should try. And he did, and he got in. So it's really important to just don't be scared of trying. Put your name down, go to a qualification race and see what happens. So another tip, which we've touched on briefly with choosing your races. So dial in your training to be really consistent over the winter, include strength, build your base, train in bad weather. You'll be amazed at how many people don't turn up to races because it's raining or it's windy. And if you're training in bad weather all the way through the winter, you've got a massive advantage over people here. Okay. That can be your kind of hidden superpower effectively, that you can actually corner and cycle in the rain because everybody else slows down. If you've got that practice and that skill, you're way ahead of everybody else. You want to increase your speed and power over the winter, so really dial in that training. If you're going for a drafting race, it's very different in terms of cycling to a non-drafting race. So non-drafting, generally you're at a nice consistent power and you're holding that power throughout the course. When you're in a drafting race, there will be surges, there will be lulls. You'll need to overtake, you might need to sprint out of a corner. So it's much more stop start. It's a very different way of racing, and it's a very different demand on your body than going gradually and steadily at set power. So you need to work on whichever type of racing you want to do. I would recommend, if you're trying to qualify for the team, to get a coach. They'll be able to guide you more through the qualification process. They'll be able to help you specifically train for your qualification races. They should know exactly what type of course you are trying to qualify on, and also what type of course the World or European Championships are on as well, and give you some really sound advice there, and also give you guidance on what sort of times you need to be hitting. So, course specific training, transitions are everything, specifically and especially in the sprints and Olympic distances. If you can be 30 seconds faster in your transition, it saves you so much energy than being 30 seconds faster on your run. Practice your transitions, put your shoes on your bike and practice putting your feet in. Your transitions need to be less than a minute. Okay, it's really easy, fast, simple speed. So you might find that you qualify because your transitions are 30 seconds faster than everybody else, even though your 5K PB is 20 to 30 seconds slower. So just bear that in mind, how easy that is to find that extra minute with those two transitions. So we've mentioned the draft legal stuff. So practice riding crit races, get yourself a British cycling license and go and do some races over the winter around the tracks. It's a lot of fun. It'll get you out into the rain, it'll improve your cornering and it'll improve your bunch riding, which is really important for those draft legal races. And then finally, always have a race plan: pace, strategy, fueling, and mindset. You need to know exactly what you're doing when you turn up for these qualification races. You need to turn up feeling confident. You need to know what the race course is like, what fuel you're going to have, what your pacing is going to be like, which will be very different between a draft and a non-draft legal race. And you need to have your head in the game, really. So always plan your races before rather than just rock up and hope for the best. So we've touched quickly on what happens when you qualify for the GB team. So you've done your race, you've registered your intent, and you've either come within the top 4, or you've got a roll down place, or you've pre-qualified from another event. For example, you've won the British Championships, so you're qualified for next year. You will get a Q put next to your name on the British Triathlon website. That's the first clue that you've qualified. These go up normally within 2 weeks of the qualifying race, and then the roll downs take a bit longer after the final qualification race and after the final pre-qualification registration deadline. So sometimes you may have all of the qualification races done and dusted, but actually, for example, for this year, you've had the European Championship in late September after all of those races. So the registration deadline for the people that pre-qualified at the European Championships is later. So the roll downs are allocated towards the end of October for these, rather than in the 2 weeks after that final qualification race. So you do have to be patient, but there will be queues pop up on the website. So do keep checking. And then shortly after those queues arrive on the website, you will get an email from the team leader, team manager, sorry, from British Triathlon, who is looking after that age group team at the race, saying congratulations on qualifying for the World European Championship that you've entered. And then it will give you lots of information. It's a really exciting email to have arrive in your inbox. It looks very official. And you will get your race entry instructions, how to buy your GBR kit, the uniform rules, often a link to join the team Facebook group, and the introduction to the team manager. You do have to pay your international race fee, which is often about £25. And this confirms your qualification slot. There will be a deadline to pay this race fee. If you do not pay this race fee, you will lose your qualification spot and it will likely roll down to the next person in the queue. So bear this in mind. If you qualify and you want to race and take up your qualification spot, you have to pay this race fee before the deadline. I would recommend that you always join the team Facebook page. You can make friends, share travel, enjoy the build up, give each other tips, and most importantly, you'll have company at the race, which is really, really fun. It's such a nice environment there, and you have a whole community of people to ask questions to. You should get your GBR age group kit as early as possible, because it has been known quite frequently to sell out with the suppliers. So as soon as you get your email to say that you've qualified, I would recommend logging into the age group shop. You will be given a code to be able to access it, and I would say to order that kit. Do try the sizes on. So if you've ordered a tri-suit, do order it without your name on first to try the size, and then send it back to be printed. The sizes can be a bit strange, so I do recommend trying it before you print. Obviously, once it's printed, you can't send it back, and they are quite expensive. So do check your sizes first. And then research your travel arrangements and your accommodation. There are official team suppliers with Nirvana who are really good, but they can be very expensive. There are team hotels. You can usually find the team hotel either from your team manager or from the Nirvana website if you go through on their booking system, but not all the way through. And then you can just go onto booking.com and see if there are rooms in that same hotel yourself. So there are lots of options available for team travel, and it depends really how you want to travel and how much money you want to spend on the event. But do have a look and spend some time looking through there. My biggest word of advice would be to make the most of it. Racing in the GB kit is really fun. It's a privilege, but you have earned it if you have gone through those qualification races and you've worked hard, because it can be stressful, and when you get there it can just be an amazing experience. Do all of the opening ceremonies, the closing ceremonies, the team photos, chat with other teams. It is just amazing. Okay, make the most of it. So good luck in your qualification bid. Do let me know. I'd love hearing success stories. So if you've decided from this that you are just going to go for it, you're going to try and qualify, ping me a message, let me know, and then check in with me and let me know how it goes. My details are on the screen. If you would like to contact me, you can email me at coach@block-raceteam.com or follow me on Instagram at Gemma_online_triathlon_coach, and I would love to hear from you and chat with you. So good luck with your qualification and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks everybody.